Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar. I'm very sorry. I just forgot to unmute my microphone. I hope you can hear me now. Does it work? If yes, then type pluses here in the chat. And if you want to say something with voice, I can allow you to use the microphone, but only if you use laptops and computers. So, by the way, guys, where are you from? Okay, Michael is joining us. Can you hear me? Is everything okay? Can you see the board? Queen b6 was the last move. Okay. Mm. Okay, so what I'm going to tell you about in this webinar. So we are going to analyze how to play against Godiva or variation of Sicilian defense. How does this position happen? Let's go back. I'll show you. E4, C5, knight F3, knight C6, D4, C takes D4, knight D4. It can be any Sicilian, but then Queen B6. Not a typical move, but some strong players use this option to outplay lower rated opponents. Why? Because not everyone is comfortable and familiar with this line. That's why a lower rated player is likely to make a mistake. That's why people play these, because then they get a sharp Sicilian position where everyone can blunder. And of course, a chance that a lower rated player blunder is much higher. That means more chances to win. I doubt that this opening can be played against a strong grandmaster, because white knows, usually grandmasters know how to play with white pieces, and of course they will get the advantage in this opening. Okay, I'm going to share my experience, and of course I will explain how to play this line properly. First, let me show my first game in this position. It was my game against candidate master Alexei Kolmogorov, and I was expecting him to play dragon, but for some reason he decided to choose this strategy. Probably he was thinking that I'm going to play Marek Zibain against dragon. That's why maybe he didn't like Marek Zibain, to play against it. That's why he chose this strategy, Godiva variation. So Queen b6. This knight is hanging. How to play? The most typical move is knight b3. This is what I played. Knight f6. The pawn is hanging. Knight c3. e6. Here I played bishop e3 with a temper. So you see queen b6 is a tempo loss. Then the queen has to go back to c7. Of course, knight b3 is not a helpful move in some of the positions, but sometimes it can be a helpful move. So I can't call knight b3 a tempo loss, but this maneuver, queen b6, c7, is definitely a tempo loss. That's why when white plays queen b6, he understands that he is likely to lose a tempo if white plays properly. And then in this position, I absolutely didn't know how to play. I played bishop d3. That's one of the possible moves in this position. Not the best one, but I did it. What was my idea? Just to protect the e4 pawn, develop the bishop. Then I played f4, queen to f3. And then I castled queenside. Why? Because black is not developed on this side. That's why white wants to push the pawns here, open the king, because of course it's dangerous to castle king side when the pawns are already on g4 or g5, for example. That's why Black is likely to keep his king in the center. And as for the queen side, two castle queen side is a mistake in such positions because these pawns are already advanced. That's why the king will be really weak there. Okay. So bishop b7 was played. How do people play in this position? There are two typical moves that are popular nowadays. King b1, kind of a prophylactics, or g4 with the idea to push g5. And nobody cares about any complications on this diagonal. g4 is okay move, and there is nothing concrete in that position. However, I played rook h to e1. Another possible move in this position, but definitely not the best one. h5 to stop me from playing g4. h3. Of course, when I play h3, I assume him to play h4, but later this pawn can become a weakness. Or he has to keep his rook on the h file not to lose a pawn because I can just attack it with my bishop. Or maybe I'll play queen f2, and queen f2 is actually double attack. I put the pressure on this pawn and also control the b6 square. So what means no rook d8 moves. Okay, but he played knight b4. And it's okay for white to let black capture on d3. King b1. Rook c8 to put some pressure. c2 is usually a weakness in such positions and the object of the attack. Queen f2. Definitely not the best move. It was better to play something like bishop d4, maybe a3, but queen f2 was played. I keep in mind this move combined with knight a5, but no. However, here black realized that bishop b6 can be a real problem, and then knight d7 was played to cover this square. Queen d2. What does queen d2 move threatens? Well, I mean, after queen d2, what white is threatening with? Can you please answer? That knight on b4. Oh, I'm sorry. There are no board design coordinates. Okay. So you mean the knight on b4? Yes, exactly. It's knight b5, attacking the queen, then pawn takes, and then queen takes on b4, winning a pawn, and also with the idea to take on b5. So it can be two extra pawns. Okay, fine. Of course, the best move that he could do was to take on d3. C takes d3, then maybe knight c5, and I was okay to play this position. White is slightly better here. No, then, for example, rook c1. If he takes here, then I get the control over this file, and he is not developed here, you see? That's why I just trade his active rook and will try to penetrate his camp with my other rook. However, in this position, he decided to go back. Not a good move. g4. Bishop e7. g5. What do you think? What's the idea of g5 move? It's not about the f6 square, so it's not about stopping this knight from coming back to f6. It has a different idea. What is this idea? What do you think? What do I want to do with g5? Who knows? So the question is, what am I threatening after g5? It can hardly be called a threat, but what do I want to do after I played g5? No, generally right. Maneuver the queen to the king side and start deadly attack. Yes, but how does g5 help? Okay, you'll see. Knight b6. So what his last moves were? He played knight c6, bishop e7, and knight b6. I played only with my pawn g4, g5, and then g6. So the idea is to ruin his pawn structure and create weaknesses here and here. For example, if he takes, then I can do anything. Queen g2, e5 is the best option, I think. So d takes e5, bishop g6, king f8, and after what? F takes e5, anything can be played. Even this move can be played with the idea to open the king's position. Oh, almost the same thing happened. So I played g6, he played knight c4, g takes f7, king takes f7, bishop c4, pawn takes on c4, knight d4. Now the e6 is a weakness too. He takes here on d4, bishop takes on d4, rook c d8. I don't know what this move means. I think it was a tempo loss. Then I play rook g1. Maybe queen f2, queen g2. No, rook g1 just to put the pressure here. And according to what I see, the only and the best option is bishop f6, because otherwise I just take on g7 or do queen g2, queen g6 maneuver. Anyway, queen g2 now. Threatening with queen g6. And then I take on f6. This is what I want. So, for example, if he does a stupid move, no, actually, you'll see. He played d5, but then queen g6. King e7. What do you think how to play in this position? Okay, Samuel is asking what if e5? You mean what if white plays e5 here? Or what? Before bishop f6. Ah, you mean here? I can just remove my bishop, for example, like this. E5 is not a good move, because in such a case, I just open the f file and add one more piece to his king's attack. If we take here, I think we're still winning. D takes e5, then queen g2, and g7 it's too risky, because if he takes, I just do this and this. He goes here and queen h8, and then I also take on d4. So at least queen g2 was a good move. So e5 is not a good option. So queen g2, e5 here anyway. Queen g6, king e7, and what do you think how to play in this position for white? We take on e5? What's the idea of taking on e5? Knight fork on d5. Bishop takes. Or you mean take on g7? Yeah, to take on g7. Maybe bishop a3 was a good move as well, but to take on g7. And what then? Bishop takes. Otherwise, he loses the game. If king moves, he loses his queen. So I sacrifice my queen for the bishop and pawn. Check. King has to move. No, king e8 was a better option, but he played this move. And rook c7. So, of course, he takes here. But then rook d4. So how many pawns? g7 and this pawn. So 2 pawns. Now he's 2 pawns down, and his king is still in trouble. However, I think it was if he plays properly, he can save his king position. But he played bishop a8 because the bishop was hanging. And then I take the other pawn, threatening a checkmate here. Rook g1 now. b3. Rook g3. And then in this position, I played this move. He took on h3. That was a mistake. Instead, he'd better play this move, but if so, I just get my other rook, I think. So let me show this move, then I get this rook. And if he takes on c3, how to play in this position? What do you think? Because if I take on c3, he takes on h7. Wait, is there a checkmate? I think there is no checkmate. Rook g7, king f6. Check on g7 with which rook? No, in such a case, if this rook checks on g7, then king h6. How to continue? Yes, f5 and then take the rook. f5 and the king has to move to f6 or g5, but then I can take the rook for free. If he takes, then rook f3 and I'm winning. So king g6 wasn't played. Instead, he played this move. However, then I still do this. King g6. Rook checks. King f6. Again with a check. If here he goes to e6, then I just checkmate him with this rook. That's why he plays rook king to g6. And here I played rook f to e7. The idea is quite obvious, right? I want to play rook e6 checkmate. That's why he plays this move. However, the best option for him was to play this move to create another square and maybe try to escape. Okay, king f6. What do you think? How to play then in this position? Now the position requires calculation. Knight d5, bishop d5. Pawn takes on d5 and his king gets another square on f5. This position requires calculation, and if I'm not mistaken, I had about 3 minutes on my clock left, and I spent all of them to be sure that I found this mating pattern and I will apply it. It's not knight d5, but it's another knight move. I played knight e2. What's the idea? The idea is to cover e6 and f5 squares. For example, bishop e4, a logical continuation. Bishop e4, rook e4. Sorry, the pawn is protected. What can he do? No, let's say he pushes the pawn. Then I do this. And on the next move, I checkmate. And he can only play this move with his king. However, if so, here, if he goes to h6, I can add this move. If he goes here, then rook g5, king h6, and knight f5 now. Checkmate. So the idea is to play knight d4. Instead of h4, in the game he played rook e3. Rook f7. If king e6, then knight d4 checkmate. He plays this move, rook g7. Well, if now he plays this move, then rook df7, king e6, and knight d4 is a checkmate. But he plays this move. How to continue this attack? What do you think? My knight is hanging as well as the e4 pawn. Still knight d4, but if knight d4, then bishop takes e4. Yeah, I see, but knight d4, bishop e4. So it's not knight d4 move, it's a different move, but just f5. After this move, he resigned because the checkmate is unavoidable. Rook g6, no defense. He can sacrifice his pieces, but nothing. He can do this, but check and then checkmate on h7. Yes, exactly. f5 worked. Okay, so finally I won the game, but the key idea was to play g5, g6. Sorry. G5, G6 to ruin his pawn structure and attack his king. After that, after this attack, I got 2 pawns material advantage, then 3 pawns material advantage. However, then I realized that his king is still weak, even in the end game, and tried to checkmate him successfully. Okay, now you are familiar with this variation. Let me show another game, the game that I played against Grandmaster. Okay, Samuel, it's not a problem. You missed the opening stage, but in the second game, I played this opening, so there will be 3 games devoted to this opening, and of course, now I will also repeat what I did in my first game. So this is the game I played against Bulgarian Grandmaster Momchil Nikolov. I played previous summer in when I was traveling to Crete. We played in Poliakora. It's a really nice place, and so I hope I visit it again. And of course, I was preparing against him, and I analyzed the game that he lost in this strategy. That's why actually that's why it was a chance for me to get the advantage, just to analyze his previous game and try to look for any deviations, analyze them with the computer, before the game and hope that he will play one of these lines. Okay, so e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight d4, queen b6. So this is Godiva variation. Knight b3, knight f6, the pawn is hanging, knight c3, e6, but bishop e3. First, in this position, I didn't play bishop e3. I played a3 first. And this move order is better. So he played queen c7. But if he plays a6, for example, then bishop e3. Queen c7 now, then f4, and so on. So what happened in my first game against candidate master Kolmogorov? So here I played this move, queen c7, then I played bishop d3. He played a6, I played f4. d6, queen f3. b5, castle queenside. Bishop b7, then I played this move. So I centralized my pieces, but it's not the best plan for Godiva variation. The best plan will be shown in my third game. Okay, what did I do against Nikolov? So here I played d6, and he decided to spend another tempo, play this move. However, if not, then I would play bishop e3 anyway. I played f4 to force him to play d6. d6 is obligatory, otherwise e5, and I got the control over the center. d6, bishop e3 now, a6. So no bishop d3 or queen f3 moves should be played for now. g4 is the best move, the best reaction. Of course, many of you would say, what if h6? h4. Can you imagine? White didn't develop his pieces, but he advances his pawns on the king side, leaving the king uncastled yet. In his previous game, Nikolov played h5 in this position, not against me, but against an international master in 2019 in Macedonia. So, of course, g5, knight comes to g4, looks dangerous, the king is weak, but no, there are so many pieces protecting the king, so don't worry. Bishop g1, because the bishop is important on this diagonal. Otherwise, queen comes back and occupy this diagonal. b6 square is important as well. g6 to stop g6 from white. Bishop e2, attacking this knight. Bishop g7. To take here and win the pawn is a possible move. However, let me show you. So check here, pawn takes, h takes, queen takes, and then e5. So I'm not sure if it's a good position, because then what? Queen goes back, e takes e4, queen e4, knight comes to e5. This is hanging. Looks like, maybe knight e5 is not the best move. Bishop e6 first, then castle. So no, looks like black has a compensation for the sacrificed pawn. But what if f5 instead of queen retreat? Yeah, it's a good question. Maybe knight e7 is enough, because looks like there are no pieces to protect the pawn. Then bishop comes, winning the pawn back. So I think black is better in such a case. In that game, rook h3 was played. That's a really good move, because later the rook comes to d3. And it also protects this knight on c3. For example, if bishop takes, then rook takes, and it's much better than ruining the pawn structure. Knight e7, rook d3, attacking on d6. e5, f5. The idea of this sacrifice was to take on d6. Now, you see, it looks like there is nothing he can do to protect on d6. Of course, I don't analyze such moves like king d7 here. King d7, for example, knight c5. And this knight is protected also by this bishop, so king goes back and then rook d6. f5, sacrificing the pawn here first. No, e5, f5. And then on d6. Here, black castled. Bishop b6, the queen is almost trapped. Bishop c4. Now g6 is a kind of a threat. g6. Bishop e6. Here, just take on f7. If rook takes, rook d8. So that's why king takes, but it doesn't help. Knight e4. And black king is totally open, so totally exposed. However, white just needs to remove the queen and castle queen side. And after a few moves, you see, white finally castled, but black position is open. Then rook d8, and after a few moves, knight f6, and if in this position he takes, then queen goes here, bishop g7, rook d8 leads to a checkmate or a queen sacrifice. So that what happened in the game. After knight f6, king f7, queen h7. So and then bishop d8 with a strong attack. And after that, black resigned because if bishop e7, then bishop e7, knight takes on e7, and if I'm not mistaken, the rook d6 is a checkmate. So when knight takes on g6, what do you mean, Samuel? When I put g6, okay. No, of course, if knight g6 is just rook g6, f3 piece, the f pawn is pinned. Okay, so let's go back. g4, many people, I think almost everyone would play this move. h4, so advance your pawns. Try to play g5 as soon as you can. This is what you should play against this strategy. What was in my game? So here b5 first. g5. Knight d7. And in this position, of course, I played a mistake. Here, there were several moves, queen f3, queen d2, something like that can be played. Anyway, even queen e2. But I decided that I can't castle queenside for some reason. However, to castle queenside is the main plan for white in this position. It's quite rare when white castles kingside. However, I thought that bishop g2, and this is a solid position. I protect my central pawn. I control d5 square, so I can castle. I'm not afraid of the attack on my king. That's why I played this move. However, this move is not so good because I lost the control over the c4 square that now he can occupy. So something like queen f3 is better. Queen f3, then castle queenside. Then h4, h5, g6. Oh, actually, h4 immediately should be played. This is even much better. Then h5 and g6. Maybe first rook h3, because I want the rook to be protected. and then g6, sacrificing the pawn. Okay, bishop g2, a kind of a mistake. Knight b6. And then I have to control this square. I play knight d2. g6. Queen e2. Oh, I keep in mind the idea to castle queen side, but I all castled king side in this position. Bishop g7, queen f2, attacking this square, this knight, I mean. Rook b8. And one of the main moves in this position is to castle queen side, but looks like it's too risky because he can just ruin our pawn structure. So what do you think? How white should play in this position? This position is actually better for white, even despite the fact that I played bishop g2 mistake, knight d2 was a passive move, queen e2, queen f2. I spent so many tempers, but didn't really improve my position. So what you mean knight b8? You mean knight db1? No, it's not a good move, of course. So how to play for white? Try to find. No, knight b1 is a bad idea because you just move with your knight back where it is on totally undeveloped. It doesn't participate in the game. It's better to allow this trade on c3. The dark squared bishop is a very important piece in this position, so it's okay if he takes and even ruins our pawn structure. Okay, h4, good choice, and maybe even the best move. No, one of the best moves is h4, h5 idea. Yes, exactly, Samuel, you're right. However, there is a move that is better, and that's a tactical move. Okay, it's e5. Why? Why e5? What can he do? If he plays d5, then bishop c5, and I control the dark squares. Castle queen side. No. If he does this, then I take. If he doesn't play like this, then maybe queen h4, queen h6, or h5, h4, h5, and so on. So here I control the position. It's closed, and dark squares are weakened, what gives some benefits for me. But the key question, how to deal with this move? Do you believe it? In this position, bishop c5 should be played anyway. And if now he takes on f4, then we play knight d e4. We sacrifice just 2 pawns, but now knight d6 is a huge threat. No, knight c4, for example. Castle queen side. Bishop e5. b3 now. Let's say knight e3, for example. In this position, looks like white sacrificed too much material, but no. It's still okay. Knight d6, bishop d6, then queen b6. The rook on b8 is hanging. So, and in this position, just something like rook d2. f4 pawn dies, the king is exposed. These two bishops are really strong. You see? So white is winning in this position. Another idea is just to play knight e4 and knight f6. So I didn't notice e5 actually. I played castle in this position, but it's still okay. He castles, rook a d1 to centralize the rook, and this is where he plays b4. That's a typical way to weaken my queen side, but but he'd better play f6 or f5. Okay, there is a question. What if black takes on c3 with the bishop? When? Here? Instead of bishop... in which line? Instead of bishop e5 in this position, what if he takes on c3? No, maybe b takes c3. Because it's okay, because I'm still threatening the checkmate with knight f6. And I don't really know how to defend the position. Probably this move. Then queen h4, queen h6 is a checkmate. So h5. Then I play h7 and queen h6 anyway. If something like knight f5. Knight e. So of course it's pinned. And the bishop is not hanging because of a back rank checkmate. Okay, let's go back. So I castled, he castled rook a d1 and b4. A takes b4, knight takes b4, and then I played e5, and that was a really strong move. I sacrificed the pawn. I wanted to gain the exchange, so bishop c5, that was right. In this position, he played knight 6 to d5. And if, for example, I take here, he takes with the bishop, threatening with bishop c5. That's why I have to play this move to cover the square. Then he plays this move, and yes, I got the exchange, but he has a compensation of 2 pawns. That's why the position is approximately equal. However, I think it's even easier to play for him because my rooks are slightly passive in this position. Okay, so here I took. That was correct. Bishop takes. And here I wanted to find the best move for white. I didn't find it. I made a move that made my position just slightly better, but it was a chance to get a much better position. No, queen f7 cannot be played. The queen is here. So bishop f8. Then he does bishop h2 check. King h1. Yeah, king h1. King f8. And then... Okay, maybe bishop h2 check is not a good move. Yeah, let's say he takes immediately. What then? I lost 1 pawn, but got the exchange. Moreover, h2 is hanging. Win back a pawn on d5, but how? He has 2 defenders. Exchange knights, then bishop. No, and then he takes with his pawn. So knight d5, bishop. And what then? It's equal. This is almost the same position as I got. I can show you. So in this position, the best move was knight ce4. Wait, sorry. Not this move, knight ce4. What can he do? What if he takes, for example, on h2, king h1, and then how to defend the position? Let's say bishop comes back to e5. But then I can take here, he takes. Knight c4. This knight is not hanging because in such a case, he gets a checkmate on f7. Bishop should go back, let's say bishop f4. Then maybe queen h4 with a strong attack. If he takes on c4 now, then I can take on f4. Rook d8, king e7, and then I take here, because if he takes here, I take on b8. Wait, no. I first give a check, and king e8 cannot be played in this position because of knight f6 checkmate. So he blocks, and then I take this rook. And yes, this position should be winning. King e7, queen d6, king d8. How to continue? Queen b6, check. King e7 is the only move. And then b3. And there are no moves that can help him to keep this knight alive. He has to play with the queen, but he loses on b4. But of course, it's really almost impossible to calculate everything here. And actually, I didn't calculate it too. And I didn't feel that this is a winning position. F takes e5, bishop e5, and in this position, I just took on d5. Knight d5, it takes d5, bishop f8, and yes, I got this position. Check on f6? Where? Okay, Michael, when? Okay. b6 like I did. Okay, fine. Let's continue. So king takes on f8. This position is approximately equal. Then I played knight f3. I want to take on e5. He takes my pawn. So I have 3 pawns, he has 5. But I have rook against bishop. Knight d4. I didn't take the pawn on d5 because if I take it, I open his bishop. This is what I didn't want. This is what I didn't want. That's why knight d4. It's better to immobilize his bishop. King g8. Rook f e1 to check on e8. Bishop b7. Rook d3. Then rook b2. So I forced him to take. Bishop c8. The position is equal, but really risky. Then I started attacking his rook. h4 protecting on g5. I'll just show you a few more moves. No, the best thing to make a draw in this position was to trade queens. With no queens on the board, it's a draw. However, that's a mistake. Here I should just repeat the position with rook c3. Rook c3, rook e3, and so on. But I played c3, bishop e4, queen f6, a5, queen d6. I offer a trade, but queen c8. He wants to enter to penetrate my camp here on g4. I played rook b2. He played a4. And that was move number 39. And I didn't play the 40 moves. Here I wanted to play c4. That's actually a good move. But here I ran out of time. And that's why I lost this game. Well, for example, a3. Then maybe rook f2 or rook f2. I don't know. So of course it's a complicated position, and we definitely shouldn't analyze it because the opening is what we really needed. For example, if queen takes on c4, then rook b8 is a strong move with the idea to deliver perpetual check. Rook b8, queen b8, king g7 check, and this is a perpetual check, just b8 and back. Oh, wait. No. It's even a winning position after rook c3. Okay. So you see, c4 is a good move because he can't capture this pawn, neither with his pawn nor with his queen. But a3 is a strong move. And if queen a3, he gives a check, and let's say king f1, I lose the h4 pawn. So I think this position is winning for him. That's why after this move, I should play something like that. And in the case of queen g4, just queen g3 to block the position. And I still, in case if he trades, I still control these two pawns. If queen d1, then the only move is rook f1. Queen d4, no, it's still a complicated position. Then rook f2, for example, and a3 is still hanging. However, I could continue playing, but I ran out of time. Okay, so let's go back. So, okay, let me show you. So g4 and g5 should be played faster. If here h6, then don't forget to play h4 and be ready to play g5 a little bit later. Okay, and the last game I want to show you was my game against um, international master Zdenka Plenkovic that I played recently in Montenegro. And this is maybe the best my game. Oh, and of course the best game in this opening. So I'm white here, and actually Zdenka Plenkovic has a FIDE rating 2368. So he's international master. E4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes on d4, knight d4. Of course, I was preparing. I expect him to play this move, knight b3, knight f6, knight c3, e6. And here I decided not to play a3 immediately. I played bishop a3. So I recommend you this move order with bishop a3, queen c7, and a3 in this position. It doesn't really change anything, but of course it's more important to play bishop a3 with a temper. I mean, it's looks better when you play bishop a3 with a temper. But the bishop should be on e3 anyway. It's the best position for a dark squared bishop in almost all Sicilian. So the idea of a3 move is to prevent bishop b4. a6, f4, d6. So black has to play this move to stop me from playing e5. g4, and he played b5. I was expecting him to play h6, and if h6 then h4, as I already demonstrated you. But here g5, that's the best move. h4, bishop b7, h5. So one of the best ideas of playing Godiva variation is to advance the pawns on the king side as soon as you can. So keep the bishop, keep your light squared bishop on f1, keep your queen on d1, and even the king in the center, but advance the pawns on the king side. Because there is no certainty where to locate your queen, locate your light squared bishop, or if it's time to castle queen side, or maybe king side, who knows. But these pawn march that helps you to gain more space on the king side will later help to attack the enemy king, and also it provides you with room for your pieces. Okay, so h5, bishop e7. Actually, I was expecting him to play knight b6. That happened in the game between Bogner and Naidic in 2017. So knight b6 looks like a natural move, and I think even better than bishop e7. Queen f3, b4. Queen f2, attacking on b6. B takes c3, bishop b6. Of course, if he takes, then I take the queen, because this pawn cannot be promoted. The knight protects my rook. So queen c8. And then I play this position, castle queen side even, and then starting the attack on the king side. Of course, I ruined my pawn structure, but king b2 and the knight on b3 can help me to defend the queen side, while on the king side, it's only white who dominates. So I don't want to show you the full game, but the full game between Bogner and Naidic, but believe me, white successfully won that game. So this is what I expected him to play, but he played this move. And then I thought, where to locate my queen? f3, d2. Oh, f3 is more typical. However, I played queen e2. Why? Because before I analyzed a similar position with computer using engine. So I did it before the game, and according to what I got from the engine, he played this move so often in many positions like that. So I decided, why not to play this move right now? And the bishop can be on g2 maybe later, or this move gives me more flexibility. I can play queen f2 if I want, maybe queen h2 if needed, or it's just a way for me to castle queen side. So that was the best move, queen e2. Knight c5. And in this position, maybe castle queen side was still a better move, but looked very risky for me. Not very, but risky for me. Another option was to play h6. However, I thought it's too early, and I didn't want to close the position on the king side, because one of the best plans is to advance the g pawn, so to weaken e6 and also the king. But h6 is a possible plan, but in only in some special positions, like for example here. Then g6, bishop g2 now, and if you advance the pawn to h6, then your task is to get this diagonal and exploit it, or to push the f pawn. So castle, castle, and then f5 should be played eventually. However, I played bishop g2. b4 was played was him. I was sure that this is a strongest continuation, but it's not true. What happened then? Well, a takes b4, knight takes b3, c takes b3, knight takes b4. So black doubles my pawns on the b file, but he has real problems with pieces development. Rook c1, with the idea to play knight d5 or something like that, maybe knight b5. And here I was expecting him to play this move. I don't know why. It's not the strongest move, but this is what I thought he would play. I castle, castle, f5. And then I try to advance my pawn. So you see, he has his pawns on the 7th rank, and I have them here on the 5th rank. These are all my kingside pawns. They should usually defend my king's position, but they are already advanced, and I am attacking him. So queen e5 wasn't played. Instead, rook c8, but I didn't like rook c8 at all. I castled. Of course, here you can only castle kingside. Queen b8. And what do you think? How to play in this position? Can you please come up with a move or a plan? f5 into g6. That's right, f5. And of course, e takes f5. If e takes f5, then e takes f5, or even rook takes f5, or even anything. No, e takes f5 is the most logical. And then I play g6 at some point, or f6. He played e5. And in this position, of course, f6, not g6. Why f6? Because he has to take. I take with my g pawn. And bishop f8. That's the only move, because if he plays bishop d8, then probably queen g4, queen g7, and so on. No, yeah, so you see queen g7, he plays rook f8, and after bishop h6, the game is over. Bishop f8, the only move. I played queen g4. Now, with this move, I tried to stop his rook activity, but instead of this move, I could just trade the rooks on this file. Bishop h3 with a temper, and then rook g1, forcing the trade, and then I play rook g8. It's absolutely winning position. Queen e6, queen f3, and no defense against bishop h6. No, actually, there is defense. He can play this move. However, if so, then knight d5. And his knight is hanging, actually. And if he takes, the queen is trapped. Can you imagine it? There is no e4 move because I take the queen with a check. Anyway, I decided to play queen g4 to immobilize his rook. Rook c6. Knight d5. Bishop c8. And this is a key moment of the game. What do you think? How white should play in this position? What comes to your mind? Knight takes before, then c6. If knight takes before, he takes on c1 first. For example, I take b4, he takes on c1, then what? My queen is hanging. This is the problem. I mean, you see the queen on g4. Bishop c8 is the last move. I see. Okay, so queen g3 is the best move in this position. And that was the second option that I calculated, but I didn't play this move. I chose another option and could only get a draw from this game, from this position. So queen g3, then what? Bishop d7, for example. Then I can trade the bishops. For example, rook g8. King h2. Then I can... So what can he do? Nothing, but I can trade the rooks, for example. Or actually, queen e6 looks really good. Because if he takes, then I push king d7. Yeah, then take, and I have another queen on the board, f8, the bishop is hanging. And actually, I almost checkmate here. Because rook f7 is the next move. If king d8 instead, then queen f7 with a winning position. The rook is hanging. If rook moves, then the bishop is. If he goes here, for example, rook h8. Then how would you play? Bishop g5? No, bishop b6. Because if he takes, I take, I still threaten a checkmate on d7. So he takes with the queen. Just rook c2 and the position is winning. After this move, of course, this move doesn't work. King c8. In such a case, just rook f2, and then I take this knight for free. He can probably do this, but it still doesn't work. Rook c2, queen b7, then checkmate. Okay, fine. So queen g3 could lead to a winning position, but I didn't calculate this bishop h3 option and so on. How did I play? I played queen g7. That was a nice sacrifice. What was my intention? So what can he do? His rook is hanging. Bishop g7. F takes g7. I am attacking the rook and I want to promote my pawn to a queen. So rook g8 is the only move. Knight f6 check. What can he do? King d8 probably. Knight g8. And then what? So my next move is knight f6 and then g8 equals queen. And then I'll be playing with extra rook and then bishop. For example, rook c1, rook c1, f6, just knight f6. Bishop e6, the only move that stops my pawn promotion. Then bishop h3 first. And what? If he keeps the bishop here, then even rook c8 works. And then I have extra piece in this position. Or maybe instead of this, just something like knight 7 with bishop e6, bishop b6, or no, bishop g5. Yeah, bishop g5 is much better. So he moves, then bishop g5, king e8, knight f6, king d8, knight d5, he goes here. Maybe rook c8 wins the queen. Knight c7 wins the queen as well, so it's a winning position, of course. Well, this is what I wanted him to do. I wanted him to take on g7, to take my queen on g7, but instead he played knight d5. It's a strong move, and of course I also analyzed it. However, I was thinking that I'm better in this position. So knight d5, queen to h8. He takes on e3, because if he takes on c1, I can take with my bishop. And that's a winning position, because later I play bishop h6. So he has to destroy my bishop on e3, otherwise I play bishop h6 and win the game. That's why knight e3, rook c6, knight f1, bishop f1, and in this position I have extra exchange. Bishop b7, rook c4. And this is what I blundered. When I calculated this line, I didn't notice this check, and I didn't notice that he can get his queen to e3, and this is how he can force a draw with a perpetual check. So queen h7, queen d2, then queen f2, and then I realized that there is nothing I can do. For example, queen f5 is impossible because of this move, and there is a pin. Rook c1 in this position, just queen h4, king g1, queen g5, and he takes the rook. So these moves don't work. That's why I played bishop g2, and after queen e1, he offers a perpetual check, and we agreed to draw. So what you may learn from this position, first, is that it's quite important to remember the theory, or at least the ideas that you can apply in this opening. And this is how you can get a really good position, and doesn't really matter who you are playing with. For example, I played it against international master, grandmaster, and even with some mistakes, I could get a really better position. So here, a3 to prevent bishop b4. Then f4, g4, g5, h4, h5. For example, even if he plays knight d7 here, g5 is the best move. Usually here, white castles queenside, but sometimes kingside, as I demonstrated you. So try to implement these ideas. And then your task is to play g6. This is the main move. Another idea is to play h6 move. But g6 is more common. Okay, fine. Do you have any questions? And by the way, I'm going to upload this game, the last game, I think, where I analyze the main moves in our chess.com group, Tricks of Chess. I can show you. This is our chess.com group, where I from time to time share some ideas, openings. Here I also publish the videos, and you can also find my webinars. So for example, Smith-Morrow Gambit, PGN, if you want, you can download. How to get there? This is the address. However, I believe all of you are already participants of this. Of our club on chess.com. But if not, please join. As for the video, as for the recording for this webinar, I will upload it on my YouTube channel. So Tricks of Chess, I can also give you the link. So for example, Richard, it's good that you joined us. However, it's time to finish the webinar. So this webinar will be was recorded, and of course you can see it on my YouTube channel maybe tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. And PGN will be provided in our chess.com group. And also follow me on chess.com because I'm going to announce more webinars. And also soon I'm going to organize a masterclass. However, this masterclass will be mainly for beginners, but I think it can be helpful for people, for players, I think below 1500. So I will announce it so that you can join, of course. And of course, next webinar on next Sunday. Try not to miss. Okay, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them. If not, then we are going to finish for today. Okay, fine. Looks like no questions. Yes, see you next week. Thank you for joining.